Yeah. Welcome to Apropos. We're usually live. Uh, this we recorded this live. We were live when we recorded it. But if you're watching it later, you're watching it on YouTube. If you want to watch it live, you got to join the Discord channel, which you can find in the show notes. We talk about closure very often. We go into a REPL and do some REPL projects. So here we are. Today we've got a full panel. We've got Mia,
Hello.
Mike,
Howdy.
Ray,
Hi.
and I'm Eric. So we're gonna work through the show notes today. See what we got here. First thing is the State of Closure survey in 2021 is done. They released the results, and there was a write up by Michael Fogus, who is newly joined. I guess is that new still? Is that about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago? He joined.
Feels like it, yeah.
What is time?
Yeah, exactly.
A succession
So-
of values that are immutable.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say it's a co-effect.
What is identity? What is closure now versus then? It's the same. The biggest news since the last survey was that Nubank acquired Cognitect, and so I feel like they focused a lot on that in the analysis. What did y'all think about this write-up, about the results?
I have not read it myself, so
Ah,
I am guilty.
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, they said it's like for startups, which is good. I think that's fair. That's
Closure.
the only message I got out of it. And in other words, startups like it because they want to move fast and do things quickly, and
Oh, okay.
you can, and like the classic argument that we make is that you get more leverage from like a more like powerful language.
right.
So even though you've got a smaller community, you can get more bang for your buck, and I think that's appealing to a lot of people who want to start businesses. To get that competitive edge.
They saw growth in large companies. Like it's the small companies still make up a larger percent, but more large companies reported using closure. And so I'd like to know if that's startups getting acquired.
Right. Are
Or-
they growing or
Yeah.
being acquired? That's right. Or, I think that, when I look at the list of closure companies, companies using closure, some of these companies look big enough. I'm talking like Amazon. They're big enough where they probably use every language at some point somewhere in their company. And, closure is just one of them. It's not like they have, if it's 1,000+ person company, it's not like they have 1,000+ closure programmers.
Except Nubank.
Except Nubank, what they have 700? They said
So
right?
many.
that is a
I
lot.
can't comprehend that. Yeah, that's
Yes, Nubank currently employs approximately 700 closure programmers. That's a lot.
It's very exciting.
imagine like if you need like some sort of utility library and you have that many programmers around, and you could have like 5 people off just building that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've only ever worked. I worked on for a bank when I first sort of worked in banking. I worked for a bank that had, and it was like a project to reform the entire back office of the merchant bank. 120 programmers. We were all like Ingress and C programmers, and this was a long time ago, obviously. But I don't know. That was already a huge amount of like people to contend with. If you wanted to, you had a very specialist area, that you were dealing with, and then there was like a tech support team, there was a database support team, and that's how you organize things. And there was like business analysts, and there was like programmers. And I imagine if you got 700, I mean, there must be so many specialities in this place.
I
just
think
to just to feed that many people work, you know?
I listened to the Cognicast where they talked. I think it was just after the acquisition. They were talking with people from Nubank, and because Cognitect has been consulting with them for a while, so they're
Sure.
familiar with it, and now they're all Nubank employees, and they were talking about the microservices that they used and how that was enabling the size of their team. Um, and a lot of it is a lot of the growth that they have, a lot of the employee growth is because they're specializing for each country they move into. They were moving into Mexico, I think it was. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I remember. And so they got to use all these, basic components they had built, but then specializing them as services for Mexico.
A microservices success story.
I know, maybe. It sounds like it.
It's really nice to hear microservices being used the way they're supposed to be used.
Yeah.
Does anyone know how they're supposed to be used?
No, we're still figuring it
Composable.
out.
I mean, when I think about it, I think about composability,
And I think of it like you should be developing general reusable services. One, I've worked on a microservices based project where I felt like it was the wrong slicing, where they sliced based on domain. So like it felt a lot like they were recreating object-oriented programming, where it's like, oh, this is the user service, and anytime we need to
Oh
do something with the
no.
user, we're going to contact this service.
They went too far.
And so of course every use case, whether it was touching another service or not, has something to do with the user. And so we had to always be like touching multiple services whenever, just to implement one new feature. And that's kind of the opposite of what you want. You want someone to be creating something like, the generality of, say, S3, where it's like, I post to a URL and it will store that for later. Like, it's very general. Anything.
Well, it's like it's functional programming writ large.
Mhm.
You want microservice per function, and you want that microservice to be able to perform its function on the input and give you the output, which is why validation is so important in a microservices architecture, because you do have garbage in, garbage out worries.
I also I agree, and I feel like the one of the hidden benefits, the unspoken benefits of microservices is that the components communicate by copying data. They share nothing, and they copy by serializing and deserializing. Usually JSON or something like that, and that means that there's no mutable state shared between them. And I don't think people talk enough about that it's like, even like people who are diehard object-oriented programmers, when they go to microservices, they feel like, oh, if things are great because we're copying. Like, yeah, that's what we try to do inside the one machine, inside the one service.
There was something kind of like that at AOL, where every time you would sign up, you have to pick a screen name. I don't know if you remember back in the day, and it would suggest screen names to you and tell you if they're already used and whatnot. That's an example of something at AOL that was a server, if you will, a service. And this was well before microservices caught on. It was like probably a decade before, but they had already chopped up things like that, at least for that particular example. And other things were larger, like the whole. Remember AIM, AOL Instant Messenger? That whole thing was like one big service, right? Where it's like a bunch of composed of lots of little servers running to make it work. But that's an example of something that was not really a microservice. That was a large thing. But the screen name service was like a pretty focused, dedicated thing. And
and it lets you scale it out because it's it's such a small problem to solve in a good way. It's like, we can solve this well for the scale that we need, because people are probably signing up all the time, and they're
Yeah.
I don't know. They need to make a lot of requests because they keep typing in names that are already used.
Already
They
used,
type in
yeah.
another name, and then
So that
yeah,
the load on that server is probably not too high, but yeah, it makes sense. It's a focused enough problem. Yeah.
right. But you can just dedicate like a whole database just to that.
Yeah.
Tune it just for this one search of like known used names.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There is a sort of problem now that, I think like bootstrapping is a lot harder with microservices. So, if you think your company is going to be fucking huge, go microservices, fair enough. But if you're just bootstrapping, I think you're paying quite a high tax for that.
You're paying
for
all
that
the complexity up
concept.
front.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
You're moving all the complexity up to the front.
Yeah. So that, but the point is that you might never benefit from that effort.
Right. That's right.
You might not ever, or a particular thing might not grow to a particular size.
Of course, then, if your company is overwhelmingly successful, you suddenly have to scale away from a monolith. And
Sure, yeah. But at that point, you've kind of proven the point,
And you have money.
yeah, that's true.
What I kind of find funny is like,
isn't the easiest thing in the world. But the other thing, even in microservices, the other problem I think is unless you've got something like Kafka, unless you've designed it for something like Kafka, then you have a problem of like globalization. You can't see everything anymore because all the data is local to that microservice. So how do you get cross-cutting concerns? So that is also an issue for microservice architectures, which you have to consider. Just saying.
There's a big cost that we were paying at this company that I felt did it wrong, where we were building it from scratch as a microservice, and we were getting almost no leverage from shared code. Because we would have to go to another repository every time we wanted to do something. Oh, didn't I already solve that? Oh no, that was in another service. Oh, I gotta go find it and copy it out, and so there was just like a lot of that.
So there's the whole mono repo thing too.
Yeah,
that.
I have not. I would have just done a monolith until we kind of like what Ray was saying, until we proved that it needed more scale in some piece of it. We were still figuring out the problem, and we had, if you chop it wrong at first, you're just setting yourself on the wrong path.
Yeah. For what it's worth, AOL was doing the mono repo thing back in the day. It's like all this stuff, all the things you think are new or actually were done. And they had one huge, I think it was pre-Git. It was like CVS, a big CVS repo, one for the back end and one for the client.
How was merging?
Well, you typically would be working on like a small part of it, right? So you'd never have conflicts really.
Yeah, so the other thing is that you can design your application so that it's like based on libraries and namespaces and stuff like that. So you don't have to, although you can have a monolith, you don't have to have everything kind of like organized in one namespace only. It's it's possible to have reusable code outside of microservices.
Well, and then you don't, the dependency management becomes a huge problem with the microservices. And that's a lot less of an issue with a monolith.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how we started talking about microservices. We
I don't
talking about
remember.
the survey.
Was it Nubank or something?
A new bank was using microservices.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We have two people on this panel who were thanked in the state of closure. So Michael Fikes for being enthusiastic, engaging, and inspirational and approachable.
Oh, I got my Michael first name.
You got the Michael, yeah. You got the Michael, yeah. And Eric Normand, as he provides great content for beginners.
Yoo-hoo.
So
beginners.
yeah, you guys are in this state of closure document.
Props, you're getting the
Nice. Get a nice.
I feel like I'm famous now. Yeah.
A nice link.
It's that Steve Martin movie.
Well, it was
Also
nice. They listed apropos. Apropos was written in one of the questions on the survey.
Oh, that's right. What do you
We're all
watch?
famous.
Yeah, what show?
Yeah, yeah. And it was like, oh, Senpai
famous.
noticed us.
What did you look at the number, the answers? Like, did people? What was the percentage of people who actually listened to us?
Oh, I don't know. We can get the full set of data. So let's pull that up.
Okay, while you pull that up,
Apropos,
I don't want to be depressed yet.
yeah.
Okay, well, wow. 39.07% of responders said that they interact with Clojure via YouTube, which is Clojure TV, Apropos, etc. So that is the third highest response. Clojurian Slack came in at 61%, and the Clojure subreddit was 45%.
Oh, okay.
So,
wow,
that's a lot of people. That's 874 respondents, which I guess makes sense because we have like 1,000 subscribers on the channel. I actually don't know how many subscribers we have. Yeah.
It went over 1,000 and I stopped looking. So
are we gonna get one of those like buttons, those big gold buttons?
I think you get something if you get 1 million. So I think,
oh, we're close.
I don't think we're going to be
It's
there.
only 3 orders of magnitude away.
You could just make one and put it in the background.
Wow.
What?
We have 1,120 subscribers.
Woohoo!
That's good.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, I would not have expected that. Okay, next in the notes, Clem.
What is that? I've heard of that.
This is an error message improvement project.
Mediator.
It's a mediator. Clojure. What is it?
Clojure error mediator.
Clojure error mediator. So the idea is you run its little REPL. It's very early, but you run its little
microservice?
REPL. No, well, it is a microservice, yes.
Okay.
So you run the REPL, you get an error, some kind of exception is thrown. It contacts their server, tries to see if that error is in their database. If it is, it shows you a better error message. Otherwise, it shows you the normal error message. And it records it. It remembers that it has been, that exception happened. And so then someone else could come by later and see it and say, oh, I know what that means, and then put in a better message. I think it's early in the project, but I think something like this is really cool, and we need something like it, especially for beginners. But I think it will benefit everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I thought, and I think Stu asked the same question, was can we just call it rather than have it via some wrapper? Because I think that would be really nice. I mean, when I eventually get the wrapper back up again, it would be quite nice to hook that up to Clem, because if it can give us a nice error message, why not? But it's the other thing that would be nice would be to have like an offline version of the database, because it's kind of annoying to have to go to the website every time.
It's actually, so I installed it today and I gave it a shot. It definitely slows down your error message. So, I was like, okay, I'll do a divide by 0. It's just something easy. And it was a few seconds before I saw the error message.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
And I think that, ergonomically, what I would have preferred was just show me the regular error message and give me a button or call this to see if there's something on the server. Instead of having it done every single time, I think, like you were saying, just like one call out to it when I choose would be nice. But, like I said, it's early. I think that there's plenty of room for this kind of tooling.
It might be kind of fun to add it in to our REPL today, and then we can see firsthand what it does. We can engage with it a little bit.
Yeah, I think also I couldn't figure out how to type in a new error message on the website. So I don't know what's going on with that, whether they haven't figured, they haven't had like new user registration flows yet. But yeah, it's early, and I'm glad that someone is working on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great initiative for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to playing with it today in the REPL.
Okay, so there's notes on that. There's an announcement. There's a project for the REPL integration, and then there's the website itself. Cool. Next up, Thomas Heller. Is that his name? The creator of Shadows CLJS has added 2 features for accessing newer JavaScript syntax into the Shadow build system. So one of them is the JavaScript class keyword, the class syntax. It's not possible in regular ClojureScript to make a class, and there's some issues with like, being able to, some APIs require you to make a class and to call super and stuff like that. And so if you need to access those APIs, the example he gives is web components. If you wanted to make a new web component, you need to make a class that extends a certain element or a certain other class. I think it's called HTML element. And you can't do that without the class keyword. And it's part of JavaScript now. And so we're missing out on that. And the other thing is template literals. This is a new kind of string. In JavaScript, you can do the double quotes, you can do the single quotes, and now there's a new thing. I think it's new because I've been doing JavaScript for 25 years. It hasn't been there. You do the backtick, and the backtick, it does string interpolation where you can put a variable name inside the string and it'll expand it. But that's not what's important. What's important is that it also has this like weird tag thing where you put something before the thing and it expands it in a different way, right? So like you could put some CSS in your backticks, and then before the opening backtick, you say something like CSS, and it'll turn it into like a CSS object. It'll get parsed or something, and that special syntax, you can't do it with a function call or something. And so he needed to add this syntax to, or a way to access that syntax using ClojureScript. And again, it's stuff you can't tap into if you're calling functions.
Is it a bit like a kind of tag literal in Clojure?
It's similar to that, yes. Yeah. Where the tag at the beginning tells the compiler, somehow that gets registered, how to interpret the template string. So I think that's cool. What I thought about, okay, so ClojureScript was written in 2011. This was before Webpack, before Babel, before React. Like this is like the dark ages now. JavaScript was a different language, and it's kind of been stuck. I don't want to say stuck in a negative way. It chose a fixed point in time, and like that's the JavaScript that it compiles to. JavaScript has changed a lot since then, and there are things that you cannot do that don't translate directly into old JavaScript. Like there's like async functions and stuff, which are not the same as a regular function, and we can't access those now. What it makes me think is like this was kind of known, right? Like it's similar in closure on the JVM. Like there are things we cannot do. There are Java things that we cannot do. Right? We can make new classes, but like you can't make a new interface, right? Like there's just things that we can't do on the JVM. And so I always looked at these as like maybe the people behind ClojureScript are just like, well, there's just things we're not going to be able to do, and that's fine. If you need to do those, just use some JavaScript and do them. I don't know, Mike, you're more in touch with this world.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing is that adding new syntax you have to be careful about, right? Because you want to follow the syntax that's defined in Clojure, really. You really don't want, well, I shouldn't say you don't want, but it would be nice if all the dialects of Clojure had the same syntax and somehow managed to let you do what you wanted to do. But that doesn't help you if you want to like maybe do an async function or something like that.
I thought you had an escape route with JS / just like dot and.
Well, that just gives you a namespace to call functions in the global.
I know.
So
what I'm saying is that there is an escape hatch into the interop.
There is a thing called JS star too that emits JavaScript if you give it a string.
Oh, really? Now, see, I didn't know about that.
Macros that do whatever you'd like. Like if you want to define anything, and so it's not intended to be used as a public facing thing, but it's there.
So like, you can just emit JavaScript as a string.
Yeah.
And it'll just get inlined right into the outputted source.
So it's almost
code.
like ASM, like in C. You're just like, hey, spit this in there, drop to the lower level.
It'd be cool if you could do that with Java.
Yeah, maybe that's like Rich could say, here's a new escape hatch to like spit out the lower layer construct, and you just feed it a string or something like that, and
just put bytecode right.
Maybe there's probably already ways you could do that if you really wanted to on the JVM.
Y'all, I have to go, so see you everybody.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Continue without me.
Bye.
Bye.
Yep.
You're right.
It is kind of funny how we were just talking last episode about how the JavaScript API has changed so much and the ClojureScript API hasn't. And then
yeah.
And whether that's a
good or bad thing, or
yeah.
I mean, I can't program in modern Java anymore. Since I started programming on Clojure, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I left Java behind, and it changed in the intervening time. Like all that, what did that stream stuff came out after that, and so yeah.
All lambdas.
Lambdas, yeah. Thank you. So, language is changing. Can be a good and bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially for
the discussion last time was a bit easier in some respects, because I think the discussion last time was about like the React ecosystem, and that's not really a language issue. That's just should we have a different kind of layer on top of React, because React itself is changing quite a lot, and I think that the whole idea anyway is that, and this is Rich's idea, which is still solid, which is JavaScript, Java rocks, JavaScript reaches. So that's what you want to do, and always you want to leverage the underlying ecosystem. And if something is like stopping you from leveraging the underlying libraries, then that's kind of like, that's a problem for the language, I think. Yeah. Like this JS, like the templating thing that Eric was talking about. But generally, if it's in the library space, then you could, in theory, just do it all in user space, and that's just up to the community then, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that Clojure is fairly stable as a language. And,
totally, yeah.
I mean, even some of the newer things that have been added may not even be necessary.
And we won't really know until they've been there for a while.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, you look at all these changes in JavaScript and Java, and I like you say, I can't program in it anymore. But I look at it and I think, well, what is this feature? Is this feature something that I'm missing in Clojure, or that would add value? I think if I'm a Java programmer, I quite like it because it's becoming more functional. Or I might hate it because it's becoming more functional. I don't know.
Right. Well, and that's just it. Like, a lot of the new stuff that's been added to Java has been to try and push it in a more functional direction, which, I would imagine we are not the only functional language on the JVM.
Sure.
And I wonder how much of that is Java losing Java programmers to other JVM languages that are more functional. It's like, oh, maybe we should put these things in Java. It would probably capture a lot of the Scala loss.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. But I think the general point is that if you're happy with the language that you've got, then you don't miss all these underlying things. But if you're an OO programmer, maybe you don't care. I remember when I was programming in Java, I think I left Java around Java 7, Java 8, just at the point lambdas were coming in.
Okay.
But I was quite excited about generics. Java 5, this was a good thing.
The template stuff.
And that was kind of nice. And annotations seem to be quite good as well, or they seem to be abused quite horribly now. But when you've got like 14 annotations top of every class, it's anyway. The point is that generics looked quite interesting. But honestly, after like 2 years, 3 years, most of my colleagues were not using any of these language features. And most of the code in the code base I was working with had none of these features in it. It was only like people who joined, like very new people with very new projects, that would actually embrace any of these new things. So even like language features in Java, I think take a huge time to get adoption in the community.
Yeah. Just because it's there doesn't mean people are going to use it.
Also, Java 8 and Java 11 are the LTS versions of Java. And getting people off Java 8, like if you're a Clojure user, why would you leave Java 8? So actually, there used to be arguments about security and stuff like that, but they're not valid anymore. They have everything from a security perspective, and Clojure runs on Java 8. So, there are some minor things. I think if you want to use GraalVM, for example, you've got to go to Java 11. But that's it. It's like these very second order things that you have to use.
Yeah. Do we want to start the REPL?
Okay. Yes.
Actually, I'm going to have to drop out myself in a few minutes, so I don't know.
Oh,
okay.
Maybe we'll wait for.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll wait for Eric then, and we can have Eric integrate Clem into the REPL for the next thing.
Right.
Looking at the problem, if we are allowed to use Clojure.set, it does make this very, very easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Clojure.set on strings. I mean, it's different, and it's like, yeah, okay, a few one-liners. But if we can spend half an hour of it on the next show, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, all right, next show, more REPL.
So I'm going to buzz off, but great to talk to you, and see you next time.
All right. Yeah. So
everyone.
Do you want to call it a day? And
yeah.
So it's a short episode today. Was it like half hour? That was good. Yep.
Yeah, it was like a half hour. We always get started a little late trying to set up the recording and stuff.
Yep. All right.
But one of these days.
Hasta la vista.
Bye, everyone.